Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to take us to AP World Key Concept 2.2, which is the Mongol Empire and the making of the modern world. This is really most influenced by this book by Jack Weatherford, a truly spectacular book called Genghis Khan and the Making of the Modern World. And in this book, Jack Weatherford really lays out pretty clearly how the Mongols created the modern world with their conquests. The conquests start as the empire begins to expand underneath Genghis Khan and will eventually come to encompass most of the Eurasian continent. So the key standard is most related to theme 3, governance. Empires collapsed in different regions of the world, and in some areas were replaced by new imperial states, including the Mongol Khanates. So some of the empires that are going to collapse are going to do so because of the Mongol conquest. That includes the Song dynasty in China, the Abbasid Caliphate, when Hulagu Khan totally devastates Baghdad in the year 1258. Then, of course, after Genghis Khan died, there continued to be expansions under his grandsons, although those expansions would eventually collapse and fragment into, as you see in 1294 there, the different Mongol Khanates that emerged. So after 1294, there's going to be the Empire of the Great Khan in East Asia. There's going to be the Chagatai Khanate, the Ilkhanate, as well as in what we would think of as most of Russia, the Khanate of the Golden Horde. Crucially, the Mongols totally devastated Eastern Europe, but did not end up deciding to invade Western Europe. Western Europe was not particularly wealthy at the time. The Mongols weren't entirely interested, and when the Khan died, the Mongols turned back from Eastern Europe, and Western Europe was going to be able to end up benefiting. So Western Europe was able to get integrated into the network of exchange, but at the same time, we're not totally devastated by the Mongols the way that the Chinese or Central Asia or the Middle East were. And so, of course, that would eventually make it so that the Western Europeans could do all of the things that they would do later on. So, takes us back to the question of economics, right? The Mongols united this huge empire that you see up here in the dotted line, but were able to facilitate exchange across that empire after they unified it all. So, that's going to have a big effect on trade. The expansion of empires, including the Mongols, facilitated Afro-Eurasian trade and communication as new people were drawn into their conquerors' economies and trade networks. So note that the Mongols are going to be able to unify Eurasia to a huge extent, and trade was going to explode afterwards, especially because the Mongols protected trade. They really liked trade because they could tax it. So it was said during the Mongol Empire that a person could walk all the way across Eurasia with a golden plate on his head and nobody would bother him because the Mongols kept the trade roads safe. The development of ideas, beliefs, and religions illustrates how groups in society view themselves. This is theme 2, culture. Interregional contacts and conflicts between states and empires, including the Mongols, encouraged significant technological and cultural transfers. So, Theravada Buddhism as well as Tibetan Buddhism were able to thrive underneath the Mongol Empire. The Mongols allowed for religious toleration, which allowed Islam to continue spreading in, say, South Asia. Examples of Greco-Islamic medical knowledge to Western Europe is an example of technological exchange that happens in this time period. As the Crusader states facilitated interaction between European areas and Islamic areas, a lot of ideas were able to transfer. This includes the facilitation of paper-making technologies transferring into Europe, as well as medical ideas related to, say, the humors that ended up spreading into Western Europe. Numbering systems were able to spread into Europe. Before the facilitation of this trade, Europeans had used a system of numbering that we like to call Roman numerals. What we like to call Arabic numerals actually didn't emerge in Arabic areas. They emerged first in India, but they spread through the Middle East in this time period and then eventually on into Europe. And of course, the Uyghur script was widely used during the Mongol dynasty or the Yuan dynasty. So this shows how cultural and technological transfers were able to happen because of the Mongols. And of course, this would eventually make the much more modern world. Another example that's not mentioned here is the canon. The Mongols themselves did not invent the canon, but they brought together the people who did invent it. And of course, that would lead to the gunpowder revolution, which would transform warfare ever afterwards. That's key concept 2.2.